In this video, we're going to be breaking down the differences between web apps, responsive apps, progressive web apps, and native applications. We often see new Bubble users getting confused by these terms because there are a lot of similar and overlapping characteristics, but there are also very distinct characteristics for some of these things. So I want to make sure you understand what each of these means, what to look out for when you're preparing your application for different devices, for putting it into the different app stores, or what to look out for when working with a third party to help you with some of these things. All right, so let's start with web applications. Right out of the box, all Bubble applications are web apps. So all that means is that they can be accessed via a browser. So your Chrome browser, Safari, Firefox, all of those things that allow you to access a website is the same mechanism for accessing a web application. You'll go to the address bar, type in the URL, and then you can get to it from there. Or you can do a search like in Google and it'll come in a search result and then you can access it that way as well. Because they are accessible via a browser, you do need to have an internet connection, okay? That is a requirement. You do need to be online. Doesn't matter what kind of device as long as you have a browser, right? This can be a Windows machine, it can be an Apple computer, it can be a Linux machine, it can be a tablet, a mobile, a smartphone, a laptop, a computer, right? If it has a browser, you can access it just like a regular website. Web applications, again, just like websites, can be designed to be responsive. And all that means is that the layouts of the web pages can adapt to different screen sizes. And so that's why in the Bubble editor, we have this responsive view to help us toggle between different breakpoints. And by breakpoint, I just mean, a different width of your device's screen or the window, so that you can actually confirm that everything is fitting inside of that view for the user, that nothing's getting cut off, that nothing's too big or too large, or the spacing is off or not, right? So this allows you to check for all of those things. And that is essentially what you're looking at when you're working with a responsive application, is how well the design adapts to different screen sizes so that everything is legible, everything can be found, the user experience is still great on all of those breakpoints. Okay, now a web application can be wrapped, into a format that is compatible for the app stores. You do have to go through a third party to do this, but all it means is that your web application is going to be converted into a format that allows you to deliver it to the app stores so that other users can then download it from the store. And that way there's a little icon on the device's home screen to launch the browser from there to then access the application. Keep in mind that a wrapped app is not a native application. It is still, at the end of the day, a web application. At best, it's a hybrid because you're accessing it from the app store, but you still need an internet connection. It's still going to require a browser in order to access it, right? So really the only reason you would want to wrap a web app is so that your users can find your application in those stores. That's the main benefit. If you think your market is going to be looking for you there, then that's a good case for going through that process. But there's really no difference in the way that you set up your mobile application or your web application here for it to be wrapped. The technology that has come out in order to do wrapping has really improved so that you really don't need to do anything different if your app is going to be just accessed via your devices, through typing in the URL, or if you're going to do it through a download. All right, now let's move on to responsive applications. Now this is just, again, it's just talking about the layouts being adaptable to the different breakpoints. Like I said, Bubble apps can obviously be designed responsively. We have our whole viewer here. We have all sorts of settings that allow us to change the responsive behavior. We can dictate, how wide things get, how small things get, the different spacing, whether things fall into rows or columns. All of those contribute to the responsive behaviors of our visual elements. And it's all going to be dictated by the most parent kind of window or screen. Okay, now your common breakpoints, as you can actually see them up here at the top, those typically align with common devices. So you have smartphones, your mobile phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, and even larger, higher resolution screens. So talking about those ultra wide, 4K screens. If your market is going to be accessing your applications on any of these devices, these are the breakpoints that you want to look out for and make sure that the responsive layouts are consistent and clean and everything is looking good across all of those. Okay, and so that's why Bubble has these different shortcuts here to help you very quickly check the responsive settings. Now let's talk about progressive web apps next. So a progressive web app is kind of a mix between a web application and a native application. There are some things that it can do and some things that it cannot. A Bubble application can be turned into a progressive web app through a third party. There are various tools out there that will create different types of capabilities, essentially extended capabilities on top of the Bubble app that you build out here. But the progressive characteristics aren't necessarily built in directly into Bubble. You have certain areas of Bubble where you can modify the application so that it becomes a progressive web app. One of those areas would be found here under settings within your SEO and meta tags section. Oftentimes with progressive web apps, you need to install some scripts, some code, and that would typically go here in either the header and or the body. Okay, now progressive web apps are going to be responsive. That's one of the staple characteristics, is that they look great on all devices. Usually when people are talking about progressive web apps, they're normally looking at mobile designs, but progressive web apps do apply to desktop applications as well. Now, another staple characteristic is that you do not need to download the application from the App Store. In fact, that is one of the biggest benefits, is that you access the website of the progressive web app and it will prompt you to download to add a shortcut to the home screen of your smart device. That way, going forward, you launch the application from that shortcut. So you do still need access to a browser because it's not a native application. You're not downloading it or installing it on your device. You're really just creating a shortcut to it. Here's actually an image that helps create the difference or illustrate the difference between a native application flow for accessing it versus a progressive web app. So with a native application, you go to the App Store, you'll search for the application, you'll install it. Oftentimes you'll have to accept a few different permissions so that the application can get access to various things on your device, your location, your camera, contacts, calendars, all of those things, depending on what the app needs. You'll accept those. Then you'll finally open up the application. It'll launch. You can sign into it or create an account, whatever it needs from you, and then you can start using it. It's many steps to get to the application, as opposed to a progressive web app, which makes this process a lot more streamlined, where you visit the website, right? This is just a regular website online. It will prompt you. A little screen will show up and say, hey, click here to add a shortcut to your device. And it will add that icon to your device's home screen. And then going forward, you just click on that icon and it will launch the application immediately. Now, what this illustration doesn't show is that you may still need to sign into the application. You may still need to create an account. It just depends on whether the application is working with user accounts or not. Typically with Bubble applications, you are creating user accounts, but just keep that in mind. The biggest difference between the two is that it's the App Store, right? You're not downloading or installing anything with a progressive web app. Okay. Now, another staple of progressive web apps is that they can offer offline capability. With Bubble apps specifically, that's really going to depend on how you've built it and what third-party tool you're using for progressive web apps. But in general, that is a very popular capability. And it's why a lot of people like going with the progressive web app. The same thing goes for the push notifications. These are more native-like notifications as opposed to notifications that you can add to web apps that are, however, they are web notifications. They still require your browser in order to work. Right. Now, there's a lot of material out there that really break down all the characteristics of progressive web apps. You'll find different arguments for, what actually makes a progressive web app, or what isn't so much as important to to truly define it as a web app, a progressive web app, I should say. So this This resource here is really helpful for breaking down all of the different characteristics. It introduces you into the key components of a progressive web app and how this, fairly new technology is actually advancing to make it even easier to make applications more accessible across devices. Now, our last category here are the native apps. Now, Bubble applications are not native apps. They are web applications. Native apps, by definition, really they're coded applications, and they're coded for specific operating systems. So the way an Android app is coded is completely different from the way, an Apple application is coded. Even if it's from the same company, it's to do the exact same things. They're two completely separate applications that are coded differently because, it's two isolated platforms. And that's going to be true for any platform that is independent. It's going to have its own native app requirements to put it together. Native apps are only accessible via the app stores. You download them and install them into your device. Some of the staple characteristics of native apps are that, yes, they offer offline capability, and they're much more built into your device, and they can communicate with your device more directly. So they have access to not only your device's operating system, but also some of the hardware. So they can communicate with the your GPS capabilities, your camera, any contacts or built-in calendar functionality that is stored directly on the device and not through some other internet required application. Native applications are great for that. Okay, so that's really the breakdown. That's the difference between these four categories. Like I said, some of these things do overlap. A web app is responsive. Progressive apps are responsive. Web apps can become progressive web apps, right? Native apps don't have as much overlap with all of these things. I would say, native apps are, of course, responsive because they are built specifically for certain devices. I mean, you might even find native apps, again, from the same company for the same actions that need to be taken. They'll create different apps specifically for the mobile devices versus the tablets versus the desktop computers. All right. Okay, so I hope that helps understand and explain just the differences between these different categories. And now you should have more information about where to go, what to look for, especially if you're going to be working with third parties for wrapping or for creating progressive web apps as you put your applications together. We'll see you in the next video.